Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.19, and this is our introduction to the Polysynth, the FM4, and the sampler. At this point in the course, we are kind of diving off the deep end, per se, where it's going to be a bit more complex. The topics themselves are not super hard to get, but actually going in there, practicing and understanding these synthesizers is going to take a very long time. I just want to say that up front. Also, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've probably been going through the whole series. This isn't like a video you're probably just going to stumble upon, but if it is, I'm not going to actually be showing you any of the instruments in this video. And right there goes 50% of the people clicking off. But for the other 50%, this is one of those very important videos because we're going to outline how we're planning to approach these topics. And I always like to give you guys my own thoughts and my own opinions about how you might want to go about this. And again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, but just know that you do want to kind of proceed with caution as we go forward. Not that this is going to be too hard for anybody to grasp, but it can get a bit overwhelming and it can distract you from your goals. And that's the big part, is your goals. You need to define what those goals are with working in this software. If your goal is to master the Polysynth, the FM4, and the sampler, and you don't care about creating music, you just want to learn these instruments, then you're absolutely in the right place and you don't need to proceed with caution. This is what it's all about for you. But my goal is to help and inspire you to create. And the tools are completely irrelevant to that goal. You don't ever need to use these instruments if you don't want to. You can continue doing what we've been doing and coming up with some really crazy and unique things. And thus far, we've always been limiting our tools, or our tools have limited us. There haven't been that many knobs, and none of the processors we've looked at take more than 30 or 40 minutes to really understand. And the more days you open up the software and turn knobs, the easier those neural pathways are going to become, and you're going to start to know what's going to happen before you even turn anything. Now, whenever you find yourself in a creative rut, and this is especially true after we go through these instruments because there's just so much you can choose from, take a step back and kind of re-challenge yourself to some of those things we've done before, taking just a couple of samples and a few effects and seeing all the variations you can come up with and making a track out of that. I'm not going to be doing too many more creation projects. We're definitely not going to do creation projects with these instruments for a couple of reasons. One of them is because I need to try to finish this whole course up in a couple of months because of other deadlines and things going on, but also because these are just so deep topics. And even if we said just use like the oscillators and the filters, there's still so many possibilities within that. Now, if you ever do get stuck and you want any kind of creation challenge, feel free to message me. There's like 100 of them I could come up with right off the top of my head. And from seeing the way that I've constructed those creation challenges in the past, you can probably create something for yourself. And if you want to get really ambitious, you can turn those creation projects into an entire album and just find a few of those effects or a few samples or this or that you can have be consistent throughout every track. And right there, you have a concept for an album. And that's where I'm saying you need to learn to enjoy your unique process and way of working. And in my opinion, that is ultimately the toughest battle of all. Learn is in bold here because that's the important point. It takes time to get used to and to accept and to enjoy the way you work in a software. I haven't shown you guys the way I do it because I don't want that process to rub off on you. I don't want you to think that that's the right way of doing it, because it's not. There are no right ways of doing it. You can watch somebody go through and make, I don't know, a genre-specific track, make a production, make a deep house song. You can watch them do that. You can copy their process, and you might come out with a pretty good track, but that's not really your process. You're following someone else's process, and you need to kind of learn how to mold it and meld it into your own thing. And at that point, opening up the software is never work. It's just a chance for you to express yourself. And that's true for both creations and productions. And the next section of this course will be on producing a full track. And that will be the one exception where I will kind of walk through and show you all of the steps just so you can see how I would go about doing it in the context of producing something specific to a genre or whatever. We are moving on to instruments that offer us many more choices and therefore more timbral varieties from the source itself. We've seen that with some of these drum synthesizers, we can get some pretty complex timbres, but it pales in comparison to what we're going to be able to do with the Polysynth, the FM4, and specifically the sampler. In my opinion, anything that gets you to open up the DAW is a good thing, and this comes back to kind of learning to enjoy your unique process. Opening up the DAW can a lot of times be very hard, and even when you open it up, deciding what am I going to do first is very, very difficult for most of us. So I'm thinking that in this case, and I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, if you find yourself really getting into the Polysynth or really getting into the FM4 or getting into the sampler, that's great because it gives you something to do when you open up the software. But, and there is a big but here, you need to keep reminding yourself of your goals. If your goal is to just master the Polysynth, become an expert with the Polysynth, then absolutely fine. Always go in there and just mess with the Polysynth. Don't even focus on anything else. However, if your goal is to create, things are a little bit different. And my goals for the course might be different from yours. So my goal is to help and inspire you to create. You may not be all that focused on creating, and that's okay. But if your goal is to produce or create, which I think for most people that is the end goal, they want to make a full track, then you need to make sure that that is the focus. And you're going to try to use these instruments for that end, to create something. The more times you sit down and make a full track, the easier it becomes the next time, and the more experimental you can get with it, or the more grounded you can get with it because you understand everything you're doing. So I always say, first thing in the morning, remind yourself of your goals. And last thing before you put your head on the pillow, remind yourself of your goals. And if the goal is to ultimately make music, that has to be the main focus, not necessarily learning every single synthesizer that exists out there. So learning the nuance and the power of these synthesis methods takes a long time, and that's why I said proceed with caution. No one can teach you how to master sound design in a month, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, regardless of what people will say online or how they're trying to sell their product to you. Sound design and sound in general is just a lifelong journey. It really is. I know that sounds very corny, but if you can't approach it and accept it as something that is going to be a lifelong mission, then you're going to be in trouble because there is no mastering it. I learn new things every single day. I come across unexpected results every single day. And that's why I love to do it. There's really no other reason than that. And I'm going to show you some techniques. I'm going to try to explain things to you so you understand the principles behind them. But at the end of the day, I can't teach you how to master sound design, and nobody really can. It's a lifelong mission for you as an individual, or for me as an individual. 1% of this stuff is concept. So when I go through and show you the concept and explain the technical details and nuances behind it, that's just 1%. The other 99% is practice and application, and every single person is capable of getting really good with these synthesizers and getting really good at making music. It just takes that time. You have to commit to it. I can't promise you great results. Only you can promise yourself great results, and that comes from practice, and that comes from failures and from patience. If you followed this course, I honestly shouldn't even have to explain these instruments because the underlying principles have already been laid out. They really have. We've talked about envelopes. We've talked about the amplitude envelope. We've talked about harmonics. We've talked about filters. We've talked about modulators. We've talked about envelopes. We've talked about all of these things, and that's going to be the basis of these synthesizers. However, I do know that they look different, and just seeing something that looks different is a little scary, and you don't really want to just jump into it right away. I totally get that. I felt the same way. And I hope that seeing the way I approach these synthesizers will help put you on a path to creating or producing with them. So the very last little point here, I have no testimonial. There's no guarantee. Like anything in life, you will get out of this whatever you choose to put into it. And I'm just here as the guy showing you those 1%. that little 1% of knowledge, and then you have to use the 99% as practice, application, hard work, patience, and of course, to try and have some fun with it too. Thank you so much for watching, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.